Well, hey everyone. This is part of our weekly AMA series. Today we've invited a very innovative RWA project called Creditcoin. They'll be talking about, what they've been building, challenges they've faced in the past, and how their product in particular has pushed the space forward. So yeah, we should dive into it. Taeho, maybe you want to give a quick intro on yourself, and then I have a few questions for you on Creditcoin's product. But yeah, why don't we start with a quick intro from you?
Thanks for the intro. My name is Tay. I'm founder of Creditcoin and also CEO of Gluwa, the builders of Creditcoin. Creditcoin started as interoperable credit, allowing people to invest using their crypto, and also the borrowers build their credit record and also therefore building their credit history. We started this journey around end of 2017, and we have been working on the problem before the word RWA and everything. And I'm glad that we are seeing a lot of other RWA projects coming up. Also, innovative projects like Plume joining the field.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I feel like, the space has, grown a lot. At least personally, I've seen tremendous growth in, this vertical from different projects, there's new technology coming onto the scene. So it's great to see that the RWA space is moving forward as a whole. So yeah, why don't we dive into it? So I prepared a few questions here. I think it'd be great to kind of dive into, the meat of the business a bit to kind of understand more on what Creditcoin is building. So I guess moving to the first question. So Creditcoin launched in 2017. As you mentioned, you guys were a first mover in this space. So you guys started building years before RWAs became a crypto narrative. What were the problems you saw that needed, solving back then?
Great question. So back in 2017, it was right after Ethereum was becoming popular, and we were digging into the crypto industry and trying to figure out what kind of problem that we can solve with the blockchain technology. And we first saw blockchain technology as a borderless financial network, which Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other stablecoin projects has accomplished to build. But we were missing credit network with this industry. So if you think of Bitcoin or stablecoin as a debit card, we were missing a credit card, just to simplify. And we were trying to figure out why it was missing and how we would build a credit network within Web3. And by digging into the problem, what we realized is within web there was no such concept of credit. So there were no infrastructure for people to borrow money. And even if they successfully borrow some amount of money, there were no infrastructure to build credit history so that they can borrow money in the future more compatible rate, and so on and so forth. And the similar problem was happening in emerging market. Now, I learned this from my fellow fintech founders who was running a successful lending business in Nigeria specifically, and a couple of other lenders in the emerging market. And their problem was while they were deploying loans to the unbanked or under, which was happening at a very unfavorable rate because there were no alternatives. By the definition of unbanked or underbanked, they had no access to from. But the problem was all that credit transactions were happening outside of banking infrastructure. Therefore, banks could not appreciate the credit history that was siloed within the database of each fintech lenders. So this was the problem of data being subjective, and this is a perfect problem for a blockchain technology to solve, so that we initiated the Creditcoin project to enable not only cross-border lending and borrowing, but also a system to accumulate credit history so that people can accumulate credit, and therefore fintech lenders that's facilitating the the loans for the people in the emerging market to raise based on their customer profile from overseas at a better rate compared to what they can raise with domestically. So that's how we started.
That's great. No, that That's great to hear that, you guys were targeting a problem that you saw in kind of an emerging market and providing better infrastructure for, people to operate more efficiently in the financial world. Because as we know, it's always difficult, to borrow money at times, depending on the business, depending on your underlying business. So it's great to hear that you guys are solving that issue. So I guess moving to my second question, I saw that Creditcoin's development company, Gluwa, which, as you mentioned, you're the CEO of, has actually recently partnered with the Central Bank of Nigeria and has been speaking with other African governments. So I guess my question here is, what can you share with us about these partnerships and how they relate to real world assets?
A lot of countries in Africa have a very large underbanked or unbanked population, and they are obviously interested in banking these people so that they can be included in the financial infrastructure and even a global market. But the current available technology has its limitations, obviously. For example, Treasury Bank find it really economically unfeasible to have branches everywhere. Africa is a huge continent, and having branch everywhere to serve, let's say, a branch serving like 100 people, where the GDP per capita is $2,000 is not economically feasible. So they're reluctant to expand out there. And for that reason, some technology like mobile money is popular. People start to use mobile minutes instead of cash as a form of currency, and that evolved into a concept of mobile money, very popular in Africa. But that also has a lot of limitations. First, you have to have a cell phone, which is growing fast. But the second part of the problem is you have to have local phone number to have a wallet. And that means you will never be able to transact with people outside of your country. So this limits what you can do with the account and the money that you hold within your cell phone. And a second part of the problem with mobile money in this case is mobile money is usually operated by a lot of foreign telcos or telcos in general, and they're not a financial institution first. So therefore, they're less regulated compared to how the banks would be regulated, so that the control of central bank or information that bank can access from this mobile money wallets is limited. So for that reason, a lot of African countries are interested in the concept of CBDC. They are interested in how it can operate as essentially a mobile money, but sans domestic phone number requirement, so that anyone can open up a wallet, and also foreigners to open up a wallet that allow them to transact with Africans. And this is very promising model for them because they're interested in including the African population to the global digital economy. They see India as a success case, or maybe even Philippines, so people can serve via internet digital services, and if that be development, call center, design, whatever, you can provide over the internet and get paid cross-border using digital currency. To enable those, they are interested in CBDC, and by us building their CBDC compatible with Web3, public chains on Web3, they are going to enable DeFi integrated RWA assets and the CBDC payments, so on and so forth. So I would say this is actually opening up a new territory for not only for Africans, but also everyone who couldn't transact with Africans before. And I think next 5 to 10 years will be very interesting to interact with them.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I feel like moving into the digital age and bringing things onto the blockchain rails definitely unlocks a lot of benefits, like you mentioned, with accessibility, transparency. So it's great to hear that you guys are kind of pioneering that move out in Africa. So my next question is, so I know that Creditcoin is currently running a test net for its new EVM chain. Are you looking for RWA builders specifically, or is it open to all types of developers?
We are evolving Creditcoin to a UVM compatible chain. And because it's EVM compatible, Turing complete, you can essentially run anything you want to run on top of it. Any smart contract that you have been running on Ethereum or other EVM compatible chains, you should be able to run on top of our EVM compatible credit coin, which we are currently calling CC3 because it's the third major version of credit coin. But then because we have our ethos started with the RWA, we will have a lot of resource for RWA builders. We will focus a lot of effort uplifting them so that they can have access to our millions of users and also relationship with the CBDC projects and whatnot, so people can earn very specialty functions, ecosystem, and access by joining our network.
That's great. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I think it's always exciting to see more developers just really just pushing the space forward as a whole. So yeah, I mean, I think those were my main questions about Credit Coin. Maybe we can have more of an open discussion. I know we've been talking more about Credit Coin for the first half of this AMA, but happy to kind of, answer any questions you might have on Plume and how, I think we can work together as, two projects building in the space. So I'll kind of turn it over to you, Tay, to see if you have any particular questions.
Absolutely. So it seems like we missed Plume like 2, 3 years ago because we were actually building a lot of things that Plume is currently offering and will offer soon, building ourselves for our very specific case. If Plume existed, I guess like 2 years ago, I guess we could have onboarded on Plume and tokenize our loans that we could sell. We have been selling through Gluwa Invest a year or two ago. It seems like you guys are to build a pipeline that potentially allowing various assets to get tokenized. But is there any limitations that people should know about? That if, let's say, I have any random real world asset, what is a good rule of thumb for me to know if my real world asset is compatible with Plume's platform or not?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. And for the net new people in the audience, just in case you guys aren't familiar, at Plume, what we're building is a new modular L2 that is focused on the real world asset space. And, our three main core pillars that fall under end to end tokenization for any sort of asset. We also focus on RWA composability. And I think our last focus on a very high level is, kind of creating this liquidity hub for capital to come into the ecosystem, invest in a specific asset, and cross pollinate into any other type of asset that they'd be interested in. So what we've built at Plume is basically an end-to-end tokenization structure. So if you had any specific asset in the real world and needed to kind of tokenize this and bring it on chain for all the benefits that we spoke about earlier, we actually provide all the infrastructure a project or a developer might need. To give you some examples, like on the compliance side, we offer all the different integrations with on ramps, KYC providers, account abstraction providers, and on the tokenization side, you're also plugged in with different licensed ATSs, transfer agents that are built on chain. So, what we've really built here is just an easy way for anyone to move any sort of asset on chain. And what we find most important is as this space continues to grow, I think a lot of people will be tokenizing very, very interesting assets. And once these assets are on chain, we believe that the next step is really to kind of like you mentioned, Tay, is to layer in DeFi to unlock liquidity and enable trading of these specific assets. So I would say like, our three main use cases would be to kind of allow people to borrow and lend against their real world assets, to speculate and trade perps on specific assets, or even to yield farm, putting money into yield bearing pools to just earn passive income. So to kind of answer your question, what we're building here is basically an entire ecosystem to have all these types of assets live in one spot and to also make it easy for projects to deploy any sort of asset. And once they're on chain, we have a liquidity hub of capital coming in and providing TVL to these specific projects.
Can you describe more about the liquidity hub that you guys have? So once, let's say, I tokenize my asset, let that be real estate, for example. What happens next? Do I go to a platform like Uniswap and list my asset against Ethereum, or do I go to a specific swap or DeFi protocol? Basically, what happens after I successfully tokenize my asset with Plume?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I would say once a developer tokenizes their asset with Plume, there are a few routes they can take. The first route is, obviously you tokenize and you build your own protocol. And we have all of the resources to help build up a brand and help go to market within the Web3 space. Like we give a lot of support to projects, whether it's, project spotlights, weekly AMAs. We have a bunch of ecosystem incentives such as grants, token incentives, and whatnot. But there's another route where, if an asset issuer tokenizes a qualified asset, they can actually work with one of our new products on Plume to join on a high level. It's just basically joining one of our yield bearing asset pool where we have specific assets that we find very interesting, and obviously we've diligenced them pretty thoroughly on our side, so that when our capital markets BD team kind of reaches out, and our team's been working pretty hard on the sourcing front with different family offices in Asia, different middle market funds, some on-chain sources such as exchange wallets or different protocol treasuries. So when they kind of express interest in parking money onto Plume, we can direct those funds and that flow into specific pools that we deem a safe investment for these types of investors.
Can I ask you one more question?
Yeah, of course.
Do you think it would be a fair comparison to call Plume like a coin list, but for RWA?
I think that is a good question. I think a good way to think of Plume is basically any other EVM chain with tooling that's created and focused on bringing these types of assets on chain. But since a lot of our team actually comes from larger ecosystems as well, I would say that we provide the same level of support that projects would need from the larger chains like Polygon and BNB, but can't get at the earlier stages. And for the coinless analogy, I think that's just a part of what we're doing. Our end state is really in a chain where all these different real world assets will exist in one place. People can come in and play with these and invest in these different real world assets that have some kind of DeFi component to it. Because in our opinion, with the markets heating up, that is what makes RWAs a little bit more interesting. Being able to speculate, being able to borrow land, and basically doing things that you really couldn't before. And once you're kind of done playing in, say, like the crypto RWA jungle, you can move your assets into our yield bearing pools to earn passive yield. So it's kind of like a one-stop shop for everything RWA related. I would say the coinless analogy is a part of what we're doing, but overall, we're just a chain that is really geared towards real world assets and creating this flywheel of assets and capital as they both kind of accelerate each other and help grow the ecosystem.
Understood. Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, of course. I know we're kind of getting up on time. We've loved the discussion today with you. I guess before we close it off, I was wondering, are you guys heading to any conferences? Do you guys have any closing remarks you'd want to make to the audience before we end things today?
Oh, I personally don't go to conferences as much, but my team is going to Token 2049 Dubai, and what else? The one in Austin.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, consensus and whatnot. But anyway, you'll find them there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll be in Dubai. Our team is actually leaving tomorrow night, so we'll be out there. It would be great to meet your team in person. I've known Alan actually on your team since 2023. Yeah, so it'd be great to kind of meet other people on the team. I guess one last thing before we go is I know that we have a Link 3 raffle out right now. So please, for you guys in the audience, don't forget to check out the raffle as we are giving away some interesting rewards. I guess we can end it here. Thanks again, Tay, for coming on and speaking about Creditcoin. I really like what you guys are doing, and I think that there's a lot of ways that Plume and Creditcoin can work together in the future. So looking forward to that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks so much for inviting us.
Of course. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.